They put me out on the doorstep on the coldest night of the year. I was left without a home, without children, and without money. In my pocket there was $50 and a phone with a dead battery. I sat down at a bus stop and cried. Suddenly a limousine pulled up. The driver came up to me and told me to get in. I was scared, but the passenger in the back seat rolled down the window and called my name. In him I recognized my former classmate, 57-year-old Bob. He loved me at school, but I went to college and met Jack, the guy of my dreams, who ruined my life. The handsome man turned out to be an alcoholic who spent his whole life on my neck. I got in the car and my life changed forever. My name is Cynthia, by the way. Since we're starting in the middle of my dramatic collapse, I figured I should at least introduce myself like a civilized woman. The first thing I remember inside that limousine was the heat. Not the emotional kind though that came later, but the blast of actual, glorious, leather-scented warmth. My fingers stung as they thawed, and I realized I'd been shivering so hard my teeth knocked together like cheap castanets. "Cynthia," Bob said, leaning forward, his eyes scanning my face the way you check a house after a hurricane. "What happened to you?" Well, where to begin? I caught sight of myself in the tinted glass. Puffy red eyes, mascara in tragic streaks, hair frizzed from the sleet. I looked like one of those before pictures in a makeover show where the host gasps and clutches her pearls. 57 years old and starting from less than nothing. "They evicted me," I said finally. My voice surprised me thin, like it belonged to someone else. My own son and his wife, out of my own house, ex-house. I swallowed. Long story. Bob's jaw tightened. He'd always had one of those square, respectable jaws, even back in high school. On him, aging looked expensive. Silver at the temples, a little fuller in the middle, but in a solid, powerful way, not the soft kind of middle that comes from too much TV and Doritos. "Then we've got time," he said quietly. "Driver, take the long way, and turn the heat up." The driver nodded in the rearview mirror without a word. Professional, the kind of man who'd seen worse than a middle-aged woman crying into her borrowed coat. I clutched my tote bag tighter. Everything I owned now, a change of clothes, a folder of documents, my dead phone, my keys to a house I no longer lived in. I'd been carrying that tote like armor for weeks. Funny thing about armor, sometimes it's just fabric pretending. "You're shaking," Bob said. "Here." He shrugged out of his coat and draped it over my shoulders before I could protest. "Cashmere." Of course it was cashmere. It smelled like cedar, citrus cologne, and the faintest hint of cigar smoke, the expensive kind you pretend not to inhale. "I'm fine," I lied automatically. "You're not," he said, "but you will be." I almost laughed. Men love to promise that, don't they? Jack had promised that too, in a crappy dorm room with a torn Springsteen poster over the bed. "We're gonna have everything, Cyn. You and me against the world." Turned out it was me against the world, with him passed out on the couch and the world calling to ask why the mortgage was late again. I brushed at my eyes and straightened up. "So," I said, forcing my voice into something resembling normal, "what are you doing in a limousine, Bob?" "I thought only prom kids and rappers rode in these." His mouth curved. "I own the company." Of course he did. "Of course you do," I muttered. He caught it and smiled a little wider. "I own a few things now. Car services, real estate, some tech investments, boring rich people stuff." The words slid past me at first. I heard rich people stuff, but my brain was still outside, stuck on the image of my daughter-in-law slamming the door. "We just can't do this anymore, Cynthia. It's too much. You're too much." Funny how children grow up to sound like their spouses instead of their mothers. Bob waited. He'd always had that way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. In high school, his crush had embarrassed me. He was the boy who carried my books, did my math homework, made me mixtapes. I'd wanted danger, mystery, chaos and tight jeans and a leather jacket. So naturally, I picked Jack. "Tell me what happened," Bob said. So I did. 2 weeks earlier, I still had a house. A small, tired, beige house in the suburbs with a roof that needed repair and a kitchen stuck in 1998. It was mine though, or it had been until my son, Tyler, and his wife, Amber, introduced me to my new favorite word, reverse mortgage. "It's easy, Mom," Tyler had said, sitting at my dining table, tapping the glossy brochure like he was on a talk show. "You get cash from the equity now. You deserve that. You worked so hard, and we'll help you manage everything." What he meant was, We have a long list of things we want to buy, and your name is at the top of the funding sources. I'd always wanted to believe the best of my boy. That's the curse of mothers. We remember their skinned knees and science fair projects when we should be looking at their credit scores and wives. Besides, Amber added, flipping her hair, it's not like you're going to use this house forever. You could downsize, get something simpler, smaller. That was the word she meant, smaller and farther away. I was stupid. Let's call it what it was. Stupid and tired. Tired of counting pennies. Tired of patching the roof myself. Tired of saying, it's okay, I'll figure it out. So I signed. I sold my house. The money hit the account, and it was like blood in the water. Oh, this will help us so much, Amber had gushed, looking at the number on the screen like it was a newborn baby. We can finally pay off the car and catch up on the cards, and then when the market cools, we'll get our own place and move you in with us, right, Ty? He'd nodded, eyes bright, already spending. I'd believed them, because apparently I like to repeat my mistakes every couple of decades. First Jack, then the kids. Fast forward through the mess, the temporary stay at their rental, the bills we'll sort out later, the fights behind closed doors that they thought I couldn't hear. Then today, we talked to the landlord, Amber had said, standing in the doorway of the guest room that had become my room. No knocking, never any knocking, and this just isn't working. We need our space. It's putting a strain on our marriage, as if I'd personally walked in and ruined their vows. You can't just, I'd started. We can. Tyler cut in, and we did. The lease is in my name, and we're moving to a smaller place closer to Amber Mom. The deposit ate more than we expected. So, he shrugged, that same little boy shrug I'd once kissed scraped elbows over. We just can't help you with anything else, Mom. Anything else being a place to live. They gave me $50 in cash like a tip for services rendered and set my tote bag on the porch beside me. Then they closed the door. No hug. No, we'll call you. Just the click of the lock. Let me tell you, that sound is worse than any slammed door. I stood there in the cold, watching my own breath fog in front of me, and thought, this is it. This is the bottom. I was wrong about that too. Bottom wasn't the porch. Bottom was the bus stop, realizing my phone was dead and my pride had punched a hole through my common sense. And then, the limousine. Bob listened to all of it without interrupting, which frankly was refreshing. Most people like to jump in when a woman cries, hand her a tissue and a solution she didn't ask for. He just sat there, big hands resting on his knees, eyes dark with something between anger and sorrow. Tyler did that, he said finally. Little Tyler Lawson, the kid who tried to eat paste in second grade. Despite myself, I snorted. He was very advanced paced. Bob gave a short, disbelieving laugh, then shook his head. I can't believe he'd treat you like that. If my mother... He stopped, jaw tightening. I remembered his mother. Tiny woman, sharp tongue, big heart. She'd died when we were in our 40s. Cancer. It had gutted him. If she were alive, he finished, and I did that to her. She'd come back from the grave just to throw a shoe at my head. Mine just throws dead and guilt, I said. Less dramatic. Same impact. We drove in silence for a moment, city lights sliding by outside, soft jazz humming from the speakers. It was surreal, floating through town in a sea of leather and soft music with my whole life compressed to $50 and a dead phone. So, I said, clearing my throat, where are we going? I'm flattered you picked up a frozen, homeless version of me, but I assume you had somewhere to be. I was on my way home from a meeting, he said, and now I'm taking you to a hotel. Oh no, you're not, I said automatically. I can't afford, I can. His tone was mild, but firm. You'll stay tonight, we'll sort things out tomorrow. You're not spending the night at a bus stop. I've imposed enough on people, I said. Trust me. He turned, really looked at me. Cynthia, getting in my car saved me from dying of boredom. You are not imposing. That tugged a reluctant smile out of me. Is that your line to all the frozen women you pick up at bus stops? Only the redheads with attitude, he said. I reached up to smooth my hair and grimaced. This is not attitude. This is humidity and despair, he chuckled. Still you in there though. I can hear it. We pulled up to a glass-fronted building that screamed money without saying a word. Warm light spilling from the lobby, a doorman in a dark coat, huge plants that had never known real soil. Bob, this place is my hotel, he said simply. One of them. I blinked. You own this? He shrugged like it was no big deal. I told you. Boring rich people stuff. Boring. Right, sure. The doorman opened the car door, and the blast of cold air slapped my cheeks again. The lobby gleamed marble floors, gold accents, the kind of floral arrangement that costs more than a month's rent in my old house. I pulled his coat tighter around me. I looked like a raccoon that lost a fight. I can't walk in there. Bob stepped out and offered me his hand. Cynthia, you've walked into worse. He wasn't wrong. I'd walked into AA meetings with Jack, bankruptcy offices, and one unforgettable parent-teacher conference where Tyler's science project had somehow set the fire alarm off. I took his hand. Heads turned as we crossed the lobby, of course. Not because of me, though I'm sure my smeared mascara didn't help, but because of him. The desk clerk straightened, her professional smile cranking up to maximum wattage. Good evening, Mr. Barrett, she said. The last name to go with the money. Bob Barrett. It suited him. Heavy, solid, hard to move. I need a suite for Miss Lawson, he said, as if ordering coffee. Top floor. Make sure there are clothes sent up. Size. He looked at me, eyes sweeping down my frame in a quick, clinical way that still made my cheeks warm. 8, 10, I muttered. Size 10, he corrected smoothly, without a blink. And toiletries, all of it. Put it on my account. Of course, sir, she said, clicking away at her keyboard. I can't let you do this, I said under my breath. Bob, this is insane. I can stay at a cheap motel. He turned back to me. Cynthia, you are not a charity case. You're an investment. An investment, I repeated, narrow-eyed. In what exactly? A good woman who's been used as a doormat by everyone around her for too damn long. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear it. I watched you pick Jack over me once. I'm not watching you pick misery again when I have the means to help. Well, that shut me up. The suite was bigger than my entire last house. I'm not exaggerating. 2 rooms, a little kitchen, a bathroom with a tub that looked like something a movie star would sit in while drinking champagne and ignoring her Oscar nominations. Wow, I breathed. Bob watched me with an unreadable expression. Will this do for tonight? For tonight, for my funeral, for my next 3 lives, I said. Bob, this is too much, he shrugged. Money is easier to spend than regret. I learned that the hard way. There was a story there, tucked into that sentence, but I was too exhausted to dig for it. He picked up the room phone, ordered a ridiculous list of things in a smooth, practiced tone. Food, clothes, a charger. When he asked what wine I liked, my brain short-circuited. I don't know. Red? He smiled faintly. Still decisive, I see. Excuse me for having just been evicted onto a sidewalk. Something in my voice cracked then, and before I knew it, I was sobbing again, big, ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs that I tried to bury in his stupid, expensive coat. I'm sorry, I gasped. I don't cry. I don't do this. I do, he said quietly. I cried like a baby in my car for an hour when my wife left. So you're in good company. I pulled back. You were married? He nodded once. Was. Long story. We can trade scars later. There was a knock at the door. Room service with trays of food that smelled like heaven and salvation. They rolled in a cart covered in silver domes and a basket with a soft robe and fluffy slippers. I'm not staying here long, I told Bob as the door closed behind them. 1 night, 2 tops, just until I figure out my next move. I am not your charity project, and I am not moving into your life like some stray cat. His eyes crinkled. You always did land on your feet. Barely, I muttered. And usually in the wrong place. He walked to the door, then paused, hand on the knob. I'm not going to push you into anything, Cynthia. Tomorrow, after you've slept and eaten and remembered that you're not a punching bag, we'll talk. I have options to offer. Like what? Becoming your live-in cook? Housekeeper? I've already played the unpaid domestic staff role for one man. I am not auditioning for the sequel. He smiled slowly. You were always a good cook. That is not a job proposal. Not yet, he said. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning. And then he was gone, the door clicking softly behind him. I didn't sleep right away. I wandered the suite, touching things that didn't belong to me: the smooth marble counter, the crisp white sheets, the remote control that somehow operated both the TV and the curtains. I plugged my phone in and watched it flicker back to life, notifications flooding in like locusts. 3 missed calls, 2 from Tyler, 1 from Amber. I stared at the screen. I didn't call back. Instead, I pulled the silver dome off one of the plates and inhaled French fries that had never seen the inside of a freezer bag, dipped in truffle something or other that probably cost more than my old grocery budget. I poured a glass of wine. Red, fancy. I drank half of it in one gulp and felt warmth unfurl in my chest. When the tears came again, they were quieter, hot, slow, private. I thought about all the ways I'd twisted myself into knots over the years from men and children who saw me as background furniture. Jack with his "I'll get sober next month, baby, I swear." Tyler with his "We'll pay you back, mom, you know we will." Amber with her sugary voice and sharp eyes, looking at my house like it was a clearance sale windfall. Maybe this was the universe's way of shoving me hard. "You wanted to be free, Cynthia," I muttered to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "Congratulations. You're so free you have nothing left to lose." Somewhere under the exhaustion, under the grief and humiliation, something else stirred a tiny, stubborn spark I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger. Not the wild kind that screams and throws things. No, this was the cold, clear anger that takes notes and makes plans. I slid into the bath, hot water biting my skin before turning delicious. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint city sounds through the glass. Bob Barrett, the boy I walked away from, had just found me at my lowest point and pulled me into a world where people brought wine when you were sad and gave you robes that felt like hugs. He was rich, very rich. Rich enough that a suite like this was a casual decision, not a once-in-a-lifetime splurge. And he had options for me. I didn't trust men. That ship had sailed, sunk, and been picked over by seagulls. But I trusted leverage. I trusted opportunity. And I trusted myself eventually. When I finally climbed into bed, wrapped in cotton that felt like clouds, I made myself a promise. I did not know how yet, or when, or through whom, but this was not how my story was going to end. I would not be the woman left on a doorstep, forgotten, grateful for scraps. Tyler and Amber had taken my house and my savings and thrown me out into the cold. One day soon they were going to learn I am a terrible person to underestimate. My last thought before sleep dragged me under was of Bob's face when he said investment. Maybe he had no idea, but he'd just invested in the worst possible thing for my ungrateful family. A very angry woman with absolutely nothing left to fear. And tomorrow, over breakfast in a hotel I could never afford, I was going to find out exactly how much damage a millionaire and a homeless cook named Cynthia could do together. I woke up to the kind of sunlight that looks filtered, soft, golden, generous. For a second I didn't remember where I was. The sheets were too smooth, the pillow too soft, and there was no faint smell of burnt toast or cheap coffee. Then I rolled over and saw the skyline through the floor to ceiling windows. Right, the billionaire rescue. Well, millionaire. Let's not exaggerate. He'd probably correct me on the decimal places. My phone, now fully charged, glowed accusingly on the nightstand. 6 new messages. 3 missed calls from Tyler. 1 from Amber. 1 from my sister. Plus a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't touch any of them. Instead, I shuffled to the bathroom, caught sight of my reflection, and snorted. My hair had decided to go full lion. My eyes were puffy, and I had pillow creases on one cheek. "Good morning, you tragic queen," I told myself. "Let's go negotiate with the rich." There was a robe waiting, still folded neatly where I'd left it, and I wrapped it tight before opening the door to the hallway. Bob had said we'd talk in the morning, but he hadn't said when. Men love to be dramatic and vague at the same time. I smelled coffee before I heard the knock. When I opened the door, a young woman in a crisp uniform smiled at me, rolling in a cart loaded with plates, a silver carafe, and enough food to feed a small village. "Good morning, Miss Lawson," she chirped. "Compliments of Mr. Barrett. He'll join you in 15 minutes if that's convenient." 15 minutes. Just enough time to panic, overthink, and decide not to show it. "That's fine," I said. "Thank you." She left, and I lifted the lids on the plates. Eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pancakes with little curls of butter that looked like they'd been sculpted by angels with too much time on their hands. I poured myself coffee, black, and took a sip. It was strong enough to stand up and file taxes. By the time the second knock came, I'd pulled my hair into a low, respectable bun and convinced myself I could do this asking for help without feeling like I'd swallowed a cactus. Bob walked in without waiting for me to say come in, which should have annoyed me, but he was carrying a paper bag and smiling, and I'm from a generation where a man bringing food earns a small pardon. "Morning," he said. "How's the queen of the top floor?" "Disoriented," I said. "Overfed." "Mildly suspicious." "Good," he said, setting the bag on the table. Suspicion keeps you alive. He'd traded last night's suit for dark jeans, a navy sweater, and that casual, expensive watch men buy when they want to look like they still split their own firewood. The silver at his temples looked deliberate, like a stylist had gone in there with a paintbrush. He caught me looking and arched a brow. "Do I pass inspection?" "You pass something," I muttered, pouring him coffee. "Sit, eat. Then tell me how you became one of those people who sends room service up like it's a text message." He sat across from me, unfolding a napkin with the ease of a man who's been doing this for years. As he reached for the coffee, I noticed his watch up close. Nothing flashy, but definitely not from the mall kiosk. The man reeked of quiet money. "How much are we talking anyway?" I asked, as he buttered toast. "In terms of rich, are we talking has a nice 401k rich, or gets invited to charity galas and pretends to like opera rich?" He gave me a slow, amused look. "I'm a millionaire, Cynthia, several times over. And for the record, I do like opera. Some of it." "Millionaire," I repeated, letting the word roll around. "Huh. You always did like extra credit." He laughed. "I started a car service in my 30s, remember? You rolled your eyes when I told you." "I rolled my eyes because you said, 'It's not just a car service, Cyn, it's a lifestyle brand,'" I said. "You sounded like a toothpaste commercial." "And yet," he said, gesturing around us, "the toothpaste paid off." Fair point. We ate in a silence that felt comfortable, familiar almost. Every now and then I'd catch him studying me, as if taking inventory. A new wrinkle here, a gray streak there. I did the same to him. 57 had treated him well. The boy I remembered, Ernest, a little awkward, craving my attention like a plant craving sun, had grown into a man who looked like he negotiated mergers before lunch. "So," I said finally, setting my fork down, "you said you had options. For me, I'm assuming you're not suggesting I become your full-time kept woman." His eyebrows shot up. "You really think that's the first thing I'd offer? With men?" I said. "It ranks high on the list." He shook his head and took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim. "I'm not offering you charity, Cynthia. I'm offering you a job and a safe place to land. Two separate things." I folded my arms. "Define safe place to land." "Well, for starters, you're not going back to your son's couch or a bus stop," he said. "You need your own space. I own several buildings in the city. I can put you in one of the apartments, no rent until you're on your feet." I bristled automatically. "I am not moving into one of your properties like some sponsored girlfriend." His lips twitched. "You'd be the worst sponsored girlfriend ever. You argue too much. Better than agreeing my way into homelessness." I shot back. "Point taken." He reached for the paper bag, finally, and slid it toward me. I pulled it open and found knives, not the scary horror movie kind. A chef's knife set, beautiful, heavy, stainless steel that caught the light. My fingers curled around the handle of the largest one like they'd been waiting for it. "I remembered," he said quietly. "You always talked about how you wanted your own kitchen, not just a house kitchen, a real one. I figure you should never have to use dull blades again in your life." I ran my thumb carefully along the flat of the blade. "In high school, I'd cooked for my friends because my mom worked nights. Food had been my language, my peace offering, my love letter. Somewhere between Jack's hangovers and the kids' school lunches, it had turned into obligation." "You listen too much," I said, my throat tight. "It's unnerving, occupational hazard," he said. "Now let me make you an indecently practical proposal." I eyed him. "If this involves a pole or a webcam, I'm out." He barked a laugh. "Good God, Cyn. No, I own 3 restaurants attached to this hotel and to others. The head chef here has been complaining for 6 months that he can't find someone who can handle home-style American cooking that doesn't taste like it came out of a can. You always could cook like Sunday felt, like Sunday felt," I repeated softly. "Yeah," he said. "Sit-down dinners and leftovers people fought over. You'd cuss at the gravy and then it would come out perfect. You remember?" I did. I remembered college dinners where people brought cheap wine and left with Tupperware. I remembered teaching Jack how to make meatloaf when he was sober enough to stand at the stove. I remembered Tyler's birthday cakes, leaning slightly to the left but full of love. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "A trial," he said. "A few weeks. You work in the hotel kitchen. Consult on a comfort food menu. We'll pay you properly. Benefits even. You're 57. You don't have time to start at the host stand and climb your way up from 'Would you like to see the dessert menu?' You're offering me a real job," I said slowly. "Just like that." I'm offering a talented, hardworking woman a chance I should have offered 20 years ago, he said. I'm also selfish. I want you here, where I can see you. There it was, that little undercurrent, the thing we danced around for 30-odd years. I am not moving into your place, I said reflexively. If that's on the table, take it off. He held up both hands. Relax. I'm not asking you to live with me. My penthouse is my cave. I like my solitude. I'm offering you an apartment, separate building, separate elevator, no strings attached except one. I narrowed my eyes. What string? You actually try, he said. You don't treat this like some temporary pity gig. You show up, you cook, you yell at people about their lazy bee shamel. You build something that's yours. I'll give you 6 months guaranteed. After that, if you hate it, we reevaluate. The knives gleamed between us, quiet witnesses. I thought about the last few months, sitting at Tyler's kitchen table, carefully stretching ground beef into 3 meals, standing in the grocery store pretending the price of eggs didn't make my stomach twist, asking Amber, through gritted teeth, if she needed me to watch the baby again. I also thought about Jack, long gone now, buried with his AA book and a flask I threw in the coffin out of spiteful irony. You trust me that much? I asked. I always did, he said simply. You just never trusted yourself as much as you trusted everyone else. That landed like a punch and a hug at the same time. The problem was, he wasn't wrong. I didn't say yes immediately. I am impulsive in many areas of life: haircuts, shoes on clearance, telling off telemarketers, but I have finally learned not to jump into arrangements where a man holds all the cards and I bring the snacks. Show me the kitchen, I said. He blinked, then smiled. Now, I said. If I'm going to cook in a place, I need to see it, smell it, check for frozen peas and microwaved mashed potatoes masquerading as housemaid. He grinned, genuinely delighted. God, I missed your snobbery. That's not snobbery, I said, getting up and tying the robe tighter. That's standards. Give me 30 minutes to look like a person and then you can parade me through your fancy empire. Deal, he said. He stood, paused, and cleared his throat. And Cynthia? Yeah, if, while we're in the kitchen, you happen to yell at one sous chef, I'll consider that a good omen. I couldn't help smiling. You always had weird ideas about romance. Who said anything about romance? He said lightly. This is capitalism. Liar, I thought, but a charming one. An hour later, I was in jeans and a borrowed blouse, hair wrangled into something presentable, walking through the back corridors of the hotel beside Bob. Hotel back halls are a whole different universe. Up front it's marble and wood and hushed voices. Back here it's fluorescent lights, carts piled with linens, and people hustling like their lives depend on it. This feels familiar, I said, dodging a busboy. Like every job I've had that involved other people's dirty plates. I started here, Bob said. Not this hotel, but one just like it. Parking cars, then dispatch, then managing. I didn't come from money, Sin. I just learned how to listen when rich people complained. We turned a corner, and the kitchen opened up in front of us. Heat, clangs, voices, the hiss of pans and the thump of knives. My heartbeat synced up with it, quickening. The head chef was a weary man in his 40s named Marco, with tattoos creeping up his neck and the expression of someone who's seen too many television cooking shows ruin people's expectations. This her? He asked, eyeing me like I was a fish he wasn't sure was fresh. This is her, Bob said. Cynthia Lawson. You're letting her run a comfort food special this weekend, Marco snorted. I haven't agreed to that. Bob didn't even look at him. You will. I held up a hand. Let me earn it. Give me a station. I'll peel potatoes, I'll chop, I'll do prep. Give me a shot and then you can decide if I'm worth your precious oven space. Marco's eyes sharpened a little. You cook professionally? I cooked for people who thought tipping meant saying thanks, I said. And I fed a man who drank like it was a competitive sport. If I can make him eat vegetables, I can handle your customers. A couple of line cooks snorted. The tension cracked just enough. Marco sighed. Fine, one day. You prep my mashed potatoes and green beans for tonight. If you don't cry and you don't quit, tomorrow you make something for the staff meal. They'll tell me honest if it sucks. Deal, I said, rolling up my sleeves. Point me to the potatoes, chef. He jerked a thumb toward a sink and moved on, barking orders. Within minutes my hands were in cold water, my knife moving in a rhythm that felt as familiar as breathing. The kitchen roared around me, orders called, pans slammed, waitstaff weaving in and out. At some point, I realized I was smiling, not the strained, sure, I'm fine smile I'd perfected with Tyler and Amber. A real one, small, but real. Bob stood in the doorway for a while, talking numbers with a manager, but his eyes kept drifting back to me. Finally, he caught my gaze, mimed a question. You good? I nodded. He smiled and left. He'd made his offer. Now it was up to me to build something out of it that wasn't just gratitude and dependence. Hours later, with my shoulders aching and my fingers wrinkled from washing vegetables, I plated a big pan of chicken and dumplings for the staff meal. The kitchen quieted as I set it down on the counter. Please don't hate it, I muttered. The staff descended on it like wolves. Cooks, dishwashers, servers, everyone grabbed a bowl. I watched their faces with the intensity of a talent show judge. Marco took a bite, chewed slowly, and closed his eyes for a second. This is, he said finally, opening one eye at me. Annoyingly good. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Annoyingly good is my specialty. One of the servers, a young woman with pink hair, grinned. If you can make this every night, I'll marry you myself. Get in line, someone else muttered. Marco threw his napkin down. Fine, you do a comfort food special this weekend. Fried chicken, this thing chicken and dumplings I supplied, and something with potatoes. People love potatoes, he said. You screw it up, you're out. You keep this up, we'll talk titles. Titles? I echoed. Sous chef, maybe more. Depends if you can handle my moods, he said, walking away. I've handled worse, I called after him. I've married worse. Laughter rippled through the room. By the time I got back to the suite, I was bone-tired, flour-dusted, and oddly light. I smelled like butter and onions. My feet hurt. It was the best I'd felt in months. Bob was waiting on the couch, jacket off, tie loosened. He stood when I walked in, studying me. So? He asked. I start tomorrow, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Staff meal was a hit. I believe the official review was annoyingly good. His whole face lit up. I knew it. Don't get cocky, I said. I still haven't agreed to your whole plan. He sobered. Fair. Sit. I dropped onto the armchair instead. This conversation needed armrests. Okay, I said. Here's where we stand. I'll take the job for the 6-month trial. I'll work like hell. I'll treat it like something that's mine. But the apartment, I'll pay rent. Real rent. Market rate. His brows lowered. Cynthia, that defeats the purpose. I want to give you breathing room. I've been breathing other people's air for too long, I said. I'm not going from my son owning my roof to you owning it. I need to know that I can stand on my own 2 feet. Even if you're the one who steadied me when I first got up. He was quiet for a moment, watching me with that old, familiar intensity. You are infuriating, he said finally. Thank you, I said. I work at it. Fine, he sighed. We split the difference. I'll put you in one of my smaller, older buildings, nice, safe, nothing flashy. You pay what you can afford the first 3 months. We'll call the rest a loan. After that, if you're steady at the restaurant, we revisit and set a proper rent. Something you choose. Non-negotiable clause. You never end up on a porch with a dead phone again. I chewed on my lower lip. And no living with you. None of this. Oh, my penthouse has a spare room. Nonsense. He put a hand over his heart. I solemnly swear I will not lure you into my man cave with promises of square footage. That sounded dirtier than you think it did, I said. He grinned. I was hoping. I rolled my eyes, but my chest felt warm, and not just from the lingering smell of the kitchen. This was fair. Not perfect, I still had pride swallowing to do but fair. Okay, I said. Deal. But I want it in writing. The loan, the terms, all of it. I've signed too many things I didn't read. His smile faded, replaced by something like respect. You'll get a contract. You'll read it. You'll send it to a lawyer if you want. I'm rich, not a villain. Those overlap a lot, I said dryly. True, he conceded. I stretched my sore hands and watched him for a moment. There was something else hovering between us, an honest question. Why are you doing all this, Bob? I asked quietly. Really, I know you liked me back then, or thought you did. That's 39 years of water under the bridge. You could have driven past that bus stop and never thought of me again. He studied his hands for a second, then looked up, eyes steady on mine. Because I don't like seeing good people thrown away, he said. Because I spent my 20s watching you pour yourself into a man who didn't deserve you, and I was too hurt and too proud to say anything. Because I built all this, he gestured vaguely, meaning the hotel, the car services, the money, and realized it doesn't mean a damn thing if I can't use it on people who actually matter to me. That's a lot of therapy talk, I said softly. Yeah, he said. I paid good money for it. I laughed, but my eyes stung. And he added, voice dropping just a fraction, because at 17, you were the girl I was sure I'd marry. At 57, you're the woman I never stopped wondering about. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not trying to cash in on old crushes. I'm just giving you the runway I wish you'd had the first time. The room went very quiet. The city hummed beyond the glass. My heart did something complicated in my chest, half flutter, half warning. I don't trust myself with men, I said finally. I pick projects, not partners. Broken ones. The kind that eat your life. He nodded. Then don't pick me. Pick the job. Pick the kitchen. Pick the apartment. Take me as a bonus friend who happens to own too many suits. I blew out a slow breath. You rehearsed that, didn't you? 3 versions, he admitted. One had more swearing. I'd like to hear that one someday. I'm counting on it. That night, alone in the massive bed one last time, I finally opened my messages. Tyler. Mom. Why aren't you picking up? We need to talk. Amber. Cynthia. It's not fair to just disappear like this. We're worried. Please let us know you're okay. My sister. Heard something happened. Call me. I don't want to hear it from Facebook. Of course. My downfall would absolutely be a social media event. I stared at Tyler's messages for a long time. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I put the phone down. Not yet. They'd thrown me away like an old couch. Now suddenly, I was the inconsiderate one for disappearing. I'd built my whole life around other people's emergencies. This time, the oxygen mask was going on me first. Instead, I dialed voicemail. The unknown number turned out to be from a property management company, confirming a showing Bob had set up for me tomorrow afternoon. Pre-war building, fully renovated, 1 bedroom, secure access, the message said. Owner requested we prioritize your application. Owner, not friend, not old classmate, not man who still looks annoyingly good in jeans. Owner. I smiled into the dark. Okay, Bob, I whispered. We'll do this your way, for now. But as I drifted toward sleep, one thought stayed with me, sharp and clear as the knife set resting on the nearby table. I may have agreed to his terms, but the next time my son and his charming little wife tried to rearrange my life, it would not be on their terms. They didn't know it yet, but the woman they'd kicked out onto the coldest night of the year was about to get a key to her own front door again. And someday soon, much sooner than they could imagine, that door and who owned it was going to be the beginning of their education. One lesson at a time. By the next morning, I'd convinced myself that the events of the past 48 hours were the result of exhaustion, freezing temperatures, and mild emotional whiplash. That's the only reasonable explanation for agreeing to a job in a hotel kitchen and letting a millionaire, multi-millionaire, slide a housing arrangement across the metaphorical table like it was a napkin. But when I stepped into the lobby and saw Bob waiting near the fireplace, coffee in hand, looking maddeningly content as if rescuing middle-aged women from curbsides was part of his wellness routine, it all came rushing back. Ready to see your new place? He asked. No, I said. Let's go. He laughed, and we walked out together into a brisk morning, the kind that stings your cheeks but reminds you you're alive. A black SUV idled at the curb, of course it did, with a driver who greeted us like we'd reserved royalty privileges. Is this really necessary? I murmured to Bob as the door closed. No, he said, but it's fun. I rolled my eyes, but secretly, yes, it was fun. For a woman whose recent transportation options included bus stop and walking, fun felt revolutionary. The apartment that was too good to be real. The building was tucked a few blocks from the hotel, not flashy, not ostentatious, but restored brick with big windows and ivy clinging to one side like it was politely trying not to intrude. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon and old wood, which instantly made me trust it. The property manager, a polite man named Grant, shook my hand as if I had a stable credit score. Welcome, Miss Lawson. This unit became available rather suddenly. Mr. Barrett asked us to prepare it for you personally. Did he? I said, glancing at Bob. Bob shrugged. Timing was good. Timing. Right. That's what we're calling it. We rode the elevator up to the 4th floor, and when Grant unlocked the door, even my cynicism took a full step back. It was beautiful. Not giant, not palatial, not anything over the top, but beautiful. Hardwood floors warmed by morning light, built-in shelves along one wall, already whispering promises of cookbooks, framed photos, and questionable souvenirs. A little balcony with enough room for a small table and the kind of plant I would absolutely forget to water. A kitchen with real counter space and room for actual cooking, not the decorative kind. This isn't a small older building, I said softly. This is Bob. This is too much. It's decent, he said. Nothing crazy. Decent? I stared at him. Bob, I have lived in apartments where the bathroom fan sounded like a plane crashing and the neighbors ran an unofficial daycare with 12 screaming children. This is hope in architectural form. He smiled. Good. You deserve a place that feels like a beginning, not an ending. I ran my fingers across the kitchen counter, cool and smooth. What's the rent? He cleared his throat. We discussed that. Discussed, yes, I said. Settled no. Grant wisely retreated to the hallway. Cynthia, Bob said, stepping closer. Think of the first 3 months as stabilization, no, and after that, no. This is infuriating, he said quietly, not angry, just impressed. You're the first person I've offered an apartment to who's fighting me harder than a bank loan officer. Well, get used to it, I said. Because if I'm taking this place and I am taking it, I'm paying something. Even a token amount. $20. A loaf of bread. A casserole that feeds an army. Something. He stared at me, then shook his head with a smile so warm I felt it in my spine. You win, he said. We'll write a rental agreement with whatever amount you feel comfortable with. And before you ask, yes, it will be in writing. Good, I said, crossing my arms. I'm done signing things that ruin my life, Cynthia, he said gently. Nothing I put in front of you will ever ruin your life. For one alarming second, my heart forgot its job. I looked away before it got ideas. I'll move in this weekend, I said. After the special menu at the restaurant. Marco's already complaining, he said. Which means he likes you. I insulted his garlic technique, I said. He insulted my haircut. It was bonding. Bob chuckled. Perfect. After signing preliminary papers and getting a spare set of keys I could hardly believe were mine, we left the building and walked down the sidewalk. Snow melt trickled in the gutters. I tucked my hands into my coat pockets. So, I said casually, hypothetically, what happens when a woman has been used, stepped on, evicted from her own home, and then suddenly finds herself in a position to stand up again? Bob glanced sideways. Hypothetically, of course. She stands up, he said simply, and she decides who gets to knock her down again. Good answer, I murmured. What's the real question? The real question, I said, is what would you do if your grown child took your house, spent the money, lied to you, threw you out, and then demanded you apologize for leaving without permission? He stopped walking, fully stopped, turned to face me. Hypothetically, he asked. Sure. I'd let them learn consequences, he said. Adults who use their parents as safety nets often forget the net has scissors. I laughed, short and sharp. You're darker than you look. I own for companies, he said. You don't survive that without a little controlled ruthlessness. Good, I said. Because my kids are about to meet ruthless Cynthia, and she's been asleep far too long. He raised a brow. What exactly does that mean? Oh, nothing, I said innocently. Just that I want stable housing for myself, and unstable expectations for them. He blinked. Should I be concerned? Absolutely not, I said, patting his arm. Unless you're planning to secretly adopt my children, in which case, run. We kept walking, but the idea that had been flickering in the back of my mind began to take shape, slow, sharp, and delicious as a simmering sauce. Tyler and Amber didn't know it yet, but fate was preparing the table, and I would be serving the main course. The job begins, so does something else. My first official day in the kitchen felt like stepping into a storm I'd been born for. Marco barked orders, the staff moved like a flock of caffeinated bees, and I thrived. By noon, I had a rhythm. By 2, I had a nickname, Red, courtesy of the pink-haired server. By closing time, I had something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. When I stepped out into the alley behind the hotel, the snow had stopped. The sky was pale blue, almost hopeful. Bob leaned against his car, arms crossed, watching me with a look I couldn't quite decipher. How was day 1? He called out. I didn't cry, I said proudly. Excellent. Did anyone else cry? A sous chef named Peter, I said. But that was because he sliced his thumb, not because of me. Ah, he said. Progress then. He opened the passenger door for me, not out of chivalry, but out of the fact that he's annoyingly well trained in kindness, and I slid in. We drove in comfortable silence for several blocks. You look happy, he said finally. I look exhausted, I corrected. That too. He glanced at me again, longer this time. His voice softened. You're coming back to life, Cyn. I ignored the warmth spreading across my chest. Well, if that continues, we'll both have to adjust. Dead Cynthia was very quiet. Alive Cynthia is loud, he said. Thank you, I said sweetly. I work at it. The spark I pretended not to notice. Back at the hotel entrance, he cleared his throat. I'll be tied up in meetings tomorrow, he said, but I'll swing by after your shift. We'll finalize the lease and go over your menu for the weekend. Fine, I said, but no hovering. Men who hover end up covered in gravy. I'll take my chances, he said with a lopsided smile. And then, because life enjoys tormenting women of a certain age, he reached out and gently brushed a smear of flour from my cheek. It was barely a touch, but I felt it everywhere. I took a small, steadying step back. Don't get ideas, Barrett, he smiled, but his voice lowered. I already have them. I turned on my heel before he could see the color rising in my face. Later that night, in my hotel suite, I sat cross-legged on the bed, lease papers beside me, chef's knives gleaming in their case. I called no one, not my sister, not old friends, certainly not my children. Instead, I stared out the window at the glittering city and let myself feel something I'd forgotten existed: momentum. My life wasn't just turning, it was accelerating. I had a job, I had an apartment, I had knives, and soon, I would have something else. A way to turn the tables. A way to reclaim the respect my children had come to believe I didn't deserve. A way to make them understand that the woman they'd thrown out into the cold didn't freeze. She thawed. She sharpened. She learned to wield consequences like cutlery. And the day was coming, oh yes, it was coming, when they would realize the new owner of their rental wasn't some faceless investor. It was their mother, and I had only just begun to plan the rest. By the following weekend, I had moved into my new apartment, keys warm in my hand, lease signed in ink I inspected 3 times, and the comfort food special at the hotel restaurant had become a modest sensation. A line cook whispered that someone had called my chicken and dumplings spiritually healing. Another said the mashed potatoes nearly made him cry. I took this as proof that my cooking was powerful enough to alter emotional weather patterns. Bob, annoyingly, took it as proof that I was made for this. Marco took it as proof that he could finally stop threatening to quit. Life felt steady, not perfect, not fixed, but steady. And that's when the message came. From Tyler, the son who suddenly remembered he had a mother. Mom, we need to talk. The landlord raised our rent again. This is getting ridiculous. We need you to help us sort this out. The message was so audacious I almost admired it. I sat at my little kitchen table, my real one, not the hotel's polished centerpiece, and reread it twice, then 3 times, sucking in a slow breath as the full absurdity of the universe washed over me. My children, my sweet little financial termites, had just asked for my help dealing with their rental crisis. A crisis caused by the rent increase. The rent increase implemented by the new owner. The new owner who was me. Oh, the poetry. I laughed so loudly I scared myself. A knock sounded at the door. 3 taps, firm, confident, familiar. Bob's knock. When I opened the door, he was leaning against the frame, holding a paper bag from the bakery down the street. Housewarming gift, he said, handing it to me. I guessed croissants. If you wanted something healthy, I'm afraid I've failed you. Croissants are vegetables in France, I said. Come in. He stepped inside and paused, looking around my new apartment the way someone looks at a baby sleeping, thoughtful, quiet, proud. Feels like you already belong here, he said. It feels like mine, I admitted, softer than intended. He smiled. Good, that's the point. But my mind was already leaping ahead, back to that message from my son. I need to tell you something, I said, sitting at the table and motioning for him to take the opposite chair. He sat. Then, because the universe adores timing, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Tyler. Please answer. We can't afford this increase. We need to meet the new landlord and talk to them directly. Maybe they'll show some compassion. I lost it. Absolutely lost it. I laughed into the table, fist pounding the wood, tears gathering in my eyes. Bob blinked. Should I be concerned you've finally snapped? They want to meet the new landlord, I wheezed. Which is you? They think the landlord will show compassion. Bob stared at me, processing this slowly. Then he grinned like he'd just witnessed divine irony strike someone who deserved it. Well, he said, leaning back in his chair, you do have compassion. For puppies, I said. And people who use turn signals. For children who throw their mothers onto porches? No, beat of silence. Then Bob said, what do you want to do? Oh, I already knew. I'd known the moment I read the message. I'm going to meet with them, I said. As the landlord. Bob's brows lifted. You're going to reveal yourself? Not immediately, I said, a thrill running through me. I want to see how they talk about me to the person they think has power over them. Bob exhaled a single, appreciative laugh. You are terrifying when you get like this. Thank you, I said sweetly. Would you like coffee? Desperately, he said. I need caffeine to survive whatever you're planning. The plan, simple, elegant, terrifying. After coffee and a croissant I inhaled like someone was going to take it from me. I called the property manager. Yes. Miss Lawson? Grant answered politely. I've been contacted by the tenants in Unit 2B, I said. They want to meet the new owner. Should I set up an introduction? He asked. No, I said. I'll handle it myself. A pause. Of course. When? Tomorrow, I said. At the property. Tell them the landlord will meet them at 1 o'clock. I'll let them know, Grant said. Will you need me present? No, I said. This is personal. He didn't ask. Smart man. When I hung up, Bob was watching me with open, delighted fascination. You know, he said, I always suspected you had this streak in you. What streak is that? Villain origin story, he said, grabbing another croissant. But like, morally justified villainy. Oh please, I said. This isn't villainy. This is parenting. He barked a laugh. I poured us both more coffee. Tomorrow, he said, when you walk into that apartment, what's your plan? I took a slow sip and let the warmth spread across my tongue. Step 1, I said, listen. Let them complain about the terrible, cruel landlord. Step 2, ask why they think they deserve a discounted rent. Step 3, he asked, eyes bright. I smiled. Reveal that the terrible, cruel landlord is the woman they left on a doorstep. Bob sat back in his chair, exhaled through his nose, and said, I have never been more attracted to someone using the word landlord. Behave, I said, though my heart pulled taut. That night I cooked. Not because I needed to. Bob had already invited me to eat with him, and the hotel restaurant would have fed me until I rolled home. I cooked because my nerves needed grounding, and chopping onions is cheaper than therapy. While the sauce simmered, I finally called my sister. Well, she said instead of hello. Look who vanished for a week. I didn't vanish, I said. I relocated. To where? Heaven? You sound too calm to be anywhere near your children. I moved into a new apartment, I said. Whose? Mine. A beat of silence. How broke are we talking? Studio above a laundromat? Building with suspicious stains in the hallway? Please tell me you at least have working locks. It's nice, I said. Really nice. How nice? Bob Barrett nice. Dead silence. Then, the Bob Barrett? The high school Bob? The one who carried your books and stared at you like you invented oxygen. That's the one. You need to start explaining immediately before my heart stops. So I did. Not everything. My sister loves drama and would have sent a marching band to the bus stop, but the important pieces. The eviction, the hotel, the job, the apartment, the upcoming confrontation. When I finished, she was quiet. Then she said, Cynthia, honey, I'm so proud of you. I could spit. That made my throat close for a second. Thanks, I said softly. Also, she added, make sure you wear something terrifying to the landlord meeting. I was planning on it. Good girl. Later, Bob texted, how are you feeling about tomorrow? I typed back, like I'm about to season my children with consequences. He replied with a laughing emoji. Then, want company afterward? I stared at the message longer than necessary, then typed, maybe. His response came immediately. I'll be waiting. I put my phone down gently, carefully, like it was holding something dangerous. Because it was. Something fragile and warm and growing. And I knew tomorrow wasn't just about confronting my children. It was about confronting the woman I used to be. The one who let people walk over her. The one who thought love meant sacrifice. The one who didn't know how to say no. Tomorrow, when I stepped into that apartment, I would walk in as someone new. Someone sharper. Someone braver. Someone who, for the first time in decades, had power. And when I showed my children exactly who their landlord was, that power would finally shift back where it belonged. To me. The next morning, I woke up earlier than my alarm, not out of nerves, but out of something far sharper: purpose. The kind that tightens your spine and narrows your focus like a hawk spotting movement in the grass. At 9, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead. At 10, I ironed a blouse I hadn't worn since my last job interview, back when I still cared what HR departments thought of me. At 11, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced my expression. Not angry, not gloating, calm, controlled, unshakably self-possessed. A landlord expression. At 12:30, Bob texted, "Thinking of you. Don't commit arson." I replied, "No promises." He sent back a thumbs up and a flame emoji, the menace. At exactly 1 o'clock, I walked up the steps of the building Tyler and Amber rented from my building, though only 2 people on earth knew it. Yet, Grant, the property manager, held the door open for me. "They're waiting in the unit," he said quietly. A bit agitated. "Good," I said. "Agitation builds character." He blinked. "Right. Should I remain nearby?" "No," I said gently. "This is a family matter. I'll handle it." He nodded and stepped away, leaving me alone in the hallway outside my children's apartment. I took a slow breath and knocked. Footsteps. A hesitant pause. Then the door opened. Amber stood there, arms folded, irritation etched into every perfectly moisturized inch of her face. "Oh," she said, blinking. "You're the new landlord?" "Indeed I am," I said smoothly. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, confused and clearly underwhelmed by my middle-aged, 5'4", non-threatening appearance. She likely expected someone taller, or male, or holding a spreadsheet. Tyler entered from the kitchen, expression tight. "Miss Lawson, right?" he asked. My maiden name. How beautiful. Cowardly, but beautiful. "Yes," I said. "Let's talk about your concerns." They ushered me to the small dining table. I sat. They sat. A triangle of tension. Amber launched in first. "We received notice that our rent is being doubled," she said. "Without warning. It's extremely unfair." "I understand," I said pleasantly. "Tell me, why do you feel it's unfair?" Tyler leaned forward, palms up, as if explaining ethics to a toddler. "We're a young family," he said. "Money doesn't grow on trees. And the previous owner always kept rent stable. This is a huge jump." I nodded. "Yes, rent can be unpredictable. Housing markets shift." Amber scoffed. "We shouldn't be punished for trying to build our life." "Punished?" I echoed. Interesting choice of word. Tyler frowned. "We're asking for a conversation, a compromise. We're reasonable people." I placed my hands calmly on the table. "Well," I said, "I'd like to understand your situation more clearly. Why do you believe you're entitled to a discount?" Amber lips parted in offense. "Entitled? Yes," I said gently. "Entitled. We're good tenants," Tyler insisted. "Never late on rent. We have a child." "I see," I said. "And do you believe good tenants should receive special treatment?" "Yes," Amber said, throwing her hands up. "That's how the world works." Ah, the irony. The delicious, succulent irony. I tilted my head. "Tell me, if you had a family member who needed housing, would you offer them discounted rent?" They froze. A shift. A crack in their confident fod. Then Tyler swallowed. "Well, yes, if it were family. Of course, even if that family member had been kicked out of their home in the coldest weather of the year." Dead silence. Amber stiffened. "I don't think that's even," I continued. "If that family member had just $50 and a dead phone battery because her own child and daughter-in-law tossed her out with no place to go." Amber's face drained of color. Tyler's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Mom," I raised a hand. "No, right now. I am your landlord, and you are my tenants. We will address the familial betrayal later." Amber whispered. "Oh my God." I leaned back in my chair, letting the truth settle around them like dust. "You wanted to meet the new landlord," I said. "So here I am." Tyler scrubbed his hands over his face. "Mom, we didn't look. Things got complicated, okay? You left without talking to us." "I was evicted," I said evenly. "That's different." "We didn't evict you," Amber said defensively. "We asked you to leave," I finished. Cold night, no backup plan, $50 in my pocket. Tyler winced. "We didn't mean it to be harsh. Intent is irrelevant," I said. "Impact is what matters. You made choices. Choices have consequences." Amber crossed her arms, leaning back. "So doubling our rent is your revenge?" "No," I said. "The rent increase is standard, market-driven, and frankly, overdue. The previous owner was undercharging. A partial lie, but oh, how good it felt. Tyler looked desperate. Mom, we can't afford the increase. We'll have to move. I understand, I said. And that is your decision to make. You are adults. A gasp escaped Amber. You're not going to help us? I met her gaze. Did you help me? That landed like a slap. A carefully measured, well-earned slap. Tyler looked down at the table, jaw working, voice strained. We're your children, and I am your mother, I said softly. Not your doormat, not your emergency ATM, not your guilt sponge. A mother, and one who deserves respect. They were silent. I stood. Our meeting is concluded, I said. Your lease renewal is due in 2 weeks. You may choose to accept the new rate or seek other housing. Either choice is yours. Amber made a small, strangled sound. I can't believe this. You should, I said. Because I finally do. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when Tyler whispered, Mom, please don't hate us. I paused, then looked back. I don't hate you, I said, but I won't rescue you from consequences anymore. And with that, I stepped into the hallway and closed the door. I didn't fall apart, not immediately. I walked down the stairs, spine straight, head high. But outside the building, the winter wind hit my face and cracked the resolve I held like brittle glass. I exhaled shakily. Then I saw Bob's SUV idling across the street. Of course he was there. He stepped out the moment he spotted me, coat open, expression unreadable. How'd it go? He asked gently. I tried to answer, but instead, I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet unraveling as he wrapped his arms around me and pulled me into his chest, warm and steady. I breathed in cedar, citrus, and the faint scent of expensive fabric. I did it, I whispered against him. I finally stood up to them. I know, he murmured into my hair, and I am so damn proud of you. I swallowed, throat tight. It hurt. Of course it did, he said. Strength always costs something. His arms tightened around me, and I let myself sink into the moment, into the safety, into him. After a long silence, he tipped my chin up gently. Cynthia, he said, voice low, you're blazing. You know that? Absolutely blazing. I wiped my eyes. I don't feel blazing. I feel like overcooked pasta. He laughed softly. You're magnificent, and you terrify me a little. Good, I said. I terrify myself too. His thumb brushed my cheek, not possessive, not assuming, just present. Come home, he said. I made lunch. I blinked. You cooked? Of course not, he said. I hired someone, but I arranged it lovingly. I laughed, broke a little more, then let him guide me into the car. Because tomorrow I'd deal with the consequences of the consequences. But today I had earned the right to be held. As we drove back toward his penthouse, a place I still pretended I wasn't curious about, Bob reached over and took my hand. Not forcefully, not timidly, just naturally. And I let him. For the first time since Jack, a man held my hand without needing me to carry his world for him. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. I'd faced my children. I'd reclaimed my dignity. I'd drawn lines they never imagined I could. But an even bigger shift was coming. Not revenge, not justice, something deeper, something older, a change in the architecture of my life. And whether I admitted it aloud or not, Bob Barrett was becoming part of that architecture, in ways neither of us could deny much longer. Bob lived in a penthouse that did not belong to the category of homes. No, his penthouse belonged to the category of settings where rich men in movies reveal they have tragic backstories, expensive glassware, and unresolved feelings. The elevator opened directly into his living room. The hardwood floors gleamed. The windows stretched from one horizon to the other. A piano sat off to the side, as though waiting for someone glamorous to cry over it. It's very subtle, I said. Bob chuckled. My decorator insisted on understated. I argued for a jacuzzi shaped like a lion, but she wouldn't budge. That's a shame, I said. Every man should have a lion jacuzzi to remind him what he's compensating for. He shot me a look so dry it could have cured meat. In the kitchen, if one may call an architectural art installation a kitchen, lunch waited. Roasted chicken, lemon potatoes, fresh salad. Someone had arranged it all beautifully. This is lovely, I said. Please thank your culinary elves. I will, he said. But first sit. Something in his voice shifted, softened, settled. I obeyed. Mostly because the chair looked more expensive than my last car. He sat across from me, elbows resting lightly on the table, studying my face. How are you really? He asked. Exhausted, I said. Relieved, a little shaky, and proud. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes, proud. He reached across the table, not grabbing, not claiming, just offering, and rested his hand over mine. You should be, he said. Today you rewrote history. My throat tightened. I didn't expect it to hurt so much. Standing up always hurts more than lying down. I shook my head with a small laugh. You and your dramatic quotes. Did you practice that one in the mirror too? Actually, he said, yes. We ate, quietly, comfortably, like two people circling something they were both aware of but not quite ready to name. When the plates were cleared, Bob leaned back. I have something for you, he said. I groaned. Bob, if it's jewelry, I swear it's not jewelry, he said. Though that's an interesting reaction. I don't want you buying me things. It's not a thing, he said. He stood, walked to a side desk, picked up a large envelope, and handed it to me. What is this? I asked. Open it. I opened it. Inside was a deed, a property deed, to a house I recognized. My old house. The house my children convinced me to sell. The house whose money they burned through like kindling. The house where I spent decades cooking, crying, laughing, surviving. I stared at the paper, mouth dry. You bought it? I whispered. Bob nodded once. The bank had foreclosed on the family who bought it from the reverse mortgage investor. The place needed repairs, and I thought, maybe you'd want it back. My heart thudded against my ribs. But Bob, this is enormous. He moved around the table and crouched beside me, gently taking the deed from my shaking hands. I didn't buy it to impress you, he said softly. I bought it because it mattered to you. And because the woman I care about shouldn't lose every piece of her life to people who didn't deserve her. Tears blurred the ink. Bob, I can't take a whole house. You're not, he said. I'm giving it to you. I laughed short, disbelief filled, almost unhinged. That's the definition of taking. He smiled, not smugly, not triumphantly, just warmly, deeply, like he'd been waiting years to place something heavy into hands that deserved it. You can live in it, he said, or rent it, or sell it, or burn it down. If it helps your healing, it's yours. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Bob, my children will discover, he said, that the apartment they live in now, the one they thought they could negotiate their way around, it is owned by a woman who now owns a house her children once stole from her. I blinked, then stared, then blinked again. A laugh slipped out of me, slow, rising, unstoppable, until it grew into something bordering on wicked joy. They're renting from me, I whispered, and the house they stole is mine again. Yes, he said. This is poetic. Yes, this is unhinged. Also yes. I stood abruptly and began pacing, hands in my hair, heart pounding, half in adrenaline, half in disbelief. What's happening to me? I demanded. 2 months ago I cried because I spilled soup on the stove. Now I'm triumphant, Bob offered. Terrifying, I corrected. That too. I stopped pacing and looked at him. Really looked at him. At the silver along his temples. At the steady confidence in his stance. At the way he watched me as though I were not a woman unraveling but a woman rising. You've done too much, I whispered. No, he said, stepping closer. I did exactly enough. I swallowed, hard. And what? I said carefully. Do you expect in return? He blinked. Cynthia, nothing. No man gives a woman an entire house for nothing. I do, he said simply, because I care about you. Because I've cared for you since you sat in front of me in 10th grade algebra refusing to learn quadratic equations. I laughed weakly. I still refuse. They're unnatural. Sin, he said, voice low. You don't owe me anything. Not affection, not gratitude, not time. But if you choose, I'd like to be in your life. In whatever way you let me. My chest tightened. I sat back down, feeling the weight of the moment press into my bones. Bob, I whispered. He knelt. He knelt on a hardwood floor that probably cost more per square foot than my old yearly salary. Let me finish, he said. Bob, no, just this one part. His hand found mine again. I am not asking for anything today, but someday, when you feel ready, when your life has stabilized and your heart has healed, I want you to know I'm here, not as a rescuer, not as a benefactor, as a man who has loved you for most of his life quietly, deeply, steadily. My breath stopped. The house is a gift, he said. My heart is an offer. You can take either, both, or neither, but I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to. Oh, hell. I leaned forward and cupped his cheek. You, I said softly, are going to ruin me. No, Cynthia, he whispered. I'm going to build with you. And for the first time in decades, maybe since I was a girl with hope and bad taste in men, I let myself believe him. He drove me home afterward, not to the hotel, not to his penthouse, but home, my home, the apartment where I would sleep tonight, the apartment I earned, the apartment I chose. At the door, he hesitated, then brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear, a simple touch, but deliberate and meaningful. Tomorrow, he said, we'll go see the house. The workers should be finishing the repairs by afternoon, okay? And Cynthia, yes, whatever happens with your children next, I'm here. I know, I said, and that's the part that scares me. He smiled softly. Good, it means it matters. He squeezed my hand once, then he left, and I stood alone in the quiet of my kitchen, the deed on my table, my pulse still fluttering like a bird behind a curtain. Tomorrow I would stand in the doorway of the house I'd lost. Tomorrow I would reclaim something stolen. Tomorrow I would begin the final act of my long, slow rise. But tonight, I sat at my table, placed a hand over the deed, and whispered to the universe, I'm not done yet, not even close. The next morning, I stood in front of my old house, fresh paint gleaming, new shingles catching the winter sun, the porch repaired so smoothly you'd never guess it once held the weight of my heartbreak. It didn't feel like stepping back in time. It felt like stepping back into a version of myself I'd forgotten. The woman who hosted holidays. The woman who baked birthday cakes. The woman who raised a family. The woman who deserved better. Bob stood beside me, hands in his coat pockets, watching my reaction with quiet expectation. Well, he asked, do you hate it? Do you want to smash the windows? We can do that. I'll get the hammers. I laughed soft, disbelieving. No, Bob, I love it. He exhaled, relieved. Good. I was prepared to love your rage, but this is easier on the insurance. We walked up the newly repaired steps. The door swung open easily, no more sticking, no more jamming, no more slamming in my face. Inside, the house looked familiar but new. The walls were the same soft cream I'd chosen years ago. The kitchen countertops gleamed. The floors no longer creaked in protest. It was home. My throat clenched. You okay? Bob asked quietly. Yes, I whispered. No, I don't know. I feel like I'm visiting the ghost of my old life. He stepped closer. Then maybe it's time to build a new one. His hand brushed mine, steady, warm, grounding. I didn't pull away. Late that afternoon, after we returned to my apartment, I received a call. Tyler. I let it ring. Then he called again, and again. Finally, I answered. Mom, he said, breathless, as if he'd run to guilt trip me. We want to talk again. Please, can we just try to fix this? Tyler, I said, voice calm, you made your choices, and you're making brutal ones. I'm making boundaries, I corrected. There's a difference. We're your family, and I am your mother, I said. Not your safety valve, Amber chimed in on speaker. We're begging you. We can't afford to move. Can you at least talk to the landlord? I am the landlord, I said simply. Amber's silence was instant and delicious. Mom, Tyler stammered. We're sorry, okay? We panicked. We shouldn't have put you out. We shouldn't have asked you to sell your house. We made mistakes. Yes, I said. You did. But we're trying to fix things. Doesn't that count? It does, I said. But fixing things begins with accepting consequences. You'll pay the rent increase, and you'll learn to stand on your own feet for once without expecting me to cushion every fall. They sputtered. They negotiated. They tried emotional ambush. I didn't budge. And after 10 long minutes, they finally said the words I had waited decades to hear. We understand. And they hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then slowly, I smiled. Bob called an hour later. Dinner? He asked. Only if you're not cooking, I said. I'm fond of living. He laughed. Come over. I hesitated, but not long. Not like I used to. Yes, I said. When I arrived, he opened the door and paused, studying me with a softness I didn't know how to brace against. You look like someone who won a battle, he said. I did, I said. Against history. He offered his arm, gentlemanly, playful. May I escort the victor to dinner? You may. Dinner was simple. Candlelight softened the room. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Everything felt warm in a way no penthouse should have been able to achieve. Halfway through dessert, Carmi brilli with a caramel shell so perfect it taunted the laws of physics. Bob stood. At first, I thought he was clearing plates. Then he reached into his pocket. Then my heart stopped. Oh no, I breathed. Bob, shh, he said, smiling nervously. Let me ruin the moment in my own way. He came around the table, kneeling again. Why is it always the kneeling that undoes a woman? Cynthia Lawson, he began, voice steady as thunder and soft as velvet. I have loved you in one form or another since I was 16 years old. I felt breathless. You are stubborn, chaotic, strong, brilliant, and far too fierce for your own good. You terrify me, inspire me, and make me want to be a better man every single day. My eyes burned. You've rebuilt your life with courage most people twice your size couldn't muster. You've taken back your dignity, your independence, your home, your future, and your fire. He opened the box. Inside was not a massive, ostentatious diamond, but a simple, elegant ring platinum, with a single stone that glowed instead of screamed. A ring chosen with knowledge, not ego. I don't want to rescue you, he said. I want to stand beside you. I don't want to fix you. I want to build with you. I don't want your gratitude. I want your partnership. His voice softened even further. Cynthia, will you marry me? My breath broke. The woman I used to be, the one who stayed with Jack out of misplaced loyalty, who let her children drain her strength, who sat on that bus stop freezing and forgotten she would never have believed this moment possible. But the woman I had become, she understood something powerful. This proposal wasn't a rescue. It was a recognition of my worth, of my journey, of my strength, of love that waited 3 decades without dimming. I cupped his face in both hands. Yes, I whispered. Of course, Will. His exhale was shaky, relieved, overwhelmed, joyful in a way that cracked something open in both of us. He stood, pulled me up with him, and kissed me. Not a movie kiss, not a desperate kiss, a kiss full of promise, a kiss that said, this time, the story ends right. We married in my restored old house, his idea, but one I agreed to instantly. The place that had held my heartbreak would now hold my happiness. My sister cried the whole time. Marco made the food, only slightly resentful that I refused to let him plate the hors d'oeuvres. The hotel staff arrived en masse, half of them taking credit for discovering me. And my children, they attended. Quiet, respectful, a little ashamed, a little humbled. It would take time to repair those relationships, but for once, it would be mutual effort, not me doing all the labor. And I walked down the aisle on steady feet. When I reached Bob, he looked at me like the sun had personally arfed. You took long enough, I whispered. I'd wait another 30 years, he said back. And I believed him. After the ceremony, after the toasts, after the dancing, Bob pulled me aside onto the porch, the same one where I once stood shivering in the dark, now lit with garlands, warm, alive. He wrapped his arms around my waist and kissed my temple. You know, he murmured, your life didn't just change forever the night I found you. No, I asked, smiling into his shoulder. No, he said, your life changed forever the moment you decided you deserved better. I rested my head against his chest. I do deserve better, I agreed, and I intend to keep it that way. His laugh was soft. God help me, I love you. Good, I said with a grin. Now you're stuck. And as the music drifted through the warm night air, as guests laughed and danced inside the house that belonged to me again, as my husband held me close, I realized that being put out in the cold had been the beginning, not the end. Because some women don't crumble when the world abandons them. Some women start over, sharper, bolder, stronger. And some women, if they're lucky, find a man who kneels not to save them, but to walk beside them, forever.